Although I have never met Kirk Douglas before this afternoon, I did read his latest book, Let's Face It, 90 Years of Living, Loving, and Learning, which succeeds in introducing this warm, thoughtful, and charming man. Different than a memoir, the book is more like a conversation with someone who has experienced life with passion and commitment and learned a few things along the way. Kirk Douglas makes no secret of the secrets to his success and shares them in bite-sized vignettes which make their points with humor and wisdom. More than once in this delightful book, Kirk Douglas reflects on his Jewishness and its influence on the course of his life and on his philosophy of living. We learned that with all that a career of achievement and fame has brought to Kirk Douglas, and with all the characters he has played, and the great men and women he has called his friends, he has remained true to his character and still remembers his name, Isser Danielovich, the son of Herschel and Brina. We are delighted to welcome him this afternoon to our museum, a museum that tells his story. Ladies and gentlemen, we are all in for a great treat this afternoon, but perhaps the luckiest among us is Budd Mishkin, who will have the pleasure of chatting with Kirk Douglas. Born the year that Kirk Douglas played the role of Dick Dudgeon in The Devil's Disciple, Budd Mishkin is a fixture in New York City's media landscape. He is the host and reporter for New York One's weekly profile series, One on One with Budd Mishkin, and a veteran broadcast journalist. As one of New York One's original employees, he has helped to build and shape what has become one of New York City's most reliable news stations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with great pleasure that I introduce Budd Mishkin and Kirk Douglas.
When you have had a stroke, you must speak slowly to be understood. And I discovered that when I speak slowly, everybody listens. They think I'm going to say something important. But when I first had my stroke, it was very difficult. And I couldn't talk. And I learned that to counteract depression, you must have humor. So I made up a joke. What does an actor who can't talk, what does he do? He waits for silent pictures to come back. But I started with a speech therapist, and at the beginning, I couldn't talk as well as my 5-year-old granddaughter, Kelsey. But I kept working. And then one day I said, Kelsey, say transcontinental. She couldn't say it. I left her in the dust. But I was trying to make a movie with my son, Michael. And I was depressed. And Michael said, Dad, keep working with your speech therapist, then we'll make the movie. Now that made me mad. I said, Michael, why don't you work with my speech? And then when you talk the way I talk, we'll make the movie. We didn't make the movie with me, but he made it had a lot of problems with the rating. Now, I don't understand why it's difficult to rate a picture. Because G, the hero, gets the girl. R, the villain gets the girl. And X, everybody gets it. But I'm so glad to be here in New York. I love New York. I was walking down the street yesterday, and I love the energy I got from New York. And a beautiful girl kept looking at me and walking toward me, and I said, I was ready to get her autograph, and she said, Mr. Douglas, Happy New Year. And my family wants to thank you for all the work that you have done for Israel. And you walked out. She didn't even want my autograph. But I'm happy to be here because my book is my ninth book. Let's face it, it's written for younger people. Because let's face it, the world is in a mess. And the younger people will inherit that mess. So we have to do all we can to help them. I think that's what I'm trying to do. And anybody older should be trying to help the young people. So I'll try to help the young people as much as I can. Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Douglas just asked me, did I talk too much? I thought for a second that would be slightly humorous, me telling Kirk Douglas, yes, you talk too much.
Yeah, because for a guy who can't talk a lot.
I don't know about you, but it sounds great to me. This is people's memories and the meaning you have to people of all different generations and this ovation today and the response you get on the street. This is all pretty good for a guy from Amsterdam, New York, huh?
And bad.
What was the dream at that time? What could you allow yourself to dream about growing up in Amsterdam?
You know, when I was a little kid, we lived at the end of Eagle Street, by the railroad track and by the mills. And at that time, in evening, I would lean on the fence and I think, what will happen to me in years to come? And I was always dreaming of locations that's so far off. But you know what? Reality far exceeded my dreams. Yes.
So are there moments when you're, for example, filming The Vikings in Norway and Spartacus in Spain and Paths of Glory in Germany? Are there still moments in those films when you're a great, great movie superstar where you're thinking, how did this all happen? This is a long way from Amsterdam, New York.
Well, they say, beware of your dreams. It may come true. And the fulfillment of all dreams is not happy. With my earlier happiness, with my success, or the success of my son Michael and his beautiful daughter Catherine, who we spent together yesterday at the attendance masters. You know, there's also tragedy. See, I have said to my kids, you kids have not had my advantages because I had the advantage of growing up in abject poverty. That means there was nowhere to go but up. And the kids who are brought up with movie stars and glamour and swimming pools, it's not always easy for them. My son Michael, I thought, was going to be a lawyer, and I was very proud. Every Jew is proud to have a son that's a lawyer. So, when he went to University of Santa Barbara, I thought he was going to study to be a lawyer. And then he said to me, Dad, I'm going to be in the play. I said, you in the play? So I went to see the play. It was Shakespeare. He had a little part, all dressed up with a Shakespearean kind of costume. And then at the end he said, Dad, how was I? I said, Michael, you were terrible. I said, I didn't understand the word that Shakespeare wrote for me. So I thought that would kill it and he would become a lawyer. A month later he said, Dad, I'm going to be in another play. That kid there with the kids up. I went to see the play. It took care of the play. After the curtains were done, how was I? Michael, I said, you were very good. And Michael has been very good from that day in everything that he has done.
Is he okay now with not going to law school? Okay. Just still maybe a little bit? Maybe a life?
Now he's worried about his son maybe goes to law.
Well, this is not your average book about I did this movie, then I did that movie. It has a lot of humor in it, but it also has passages about some very serious issues, like your stroke and near death, and also the death of your son. Was it difficult to write?
Well, you know, that's something that has happened so often in our profession. The death of son or daughter through suicide or through drugs. And we just have to live with it. When I was writing the book, I didn't want to deal with something so tragic. But then I realized, when I had my stroke, I read the book, My Stroke of Luck, and it helped a lot of people. Now, it helped people who had a stroke, or people who knew others who had stroke. And I thought I had to write about my son Eric. And I did include it in my book, and I have a page in the book that has a whole list of a partial list of sons and daughters of movie stars who ended their life by too much stroke or by suicide. And it's a sad thing. And that's where the pitfall of our profession, the fame and fortune. You have to be sophisticated enough to deal with it. And sometimes a young person cannot deal with it. And when every day we see in the papers the result of not being able to deal with it. And it's sad. So I wanted to share that experience in the hope that would help other people. Because you are filled with guilt. What did I do wrong? And you really will learn that there's nothing you can do. The individual who has to sink to the bottom and want to get up, and want to get out and cure himself, then it will work. Otherwise, it's hopeless.
On a happier note, when you first came to New York and you were in the American Academy of Dramatic Arts, along with an actress by the name of Lauren Bacall, who I believe made a couple of movies that were somewhat successful. What was your image of New York at that time, and what were those years like?
Well, I always loved New York because it's seething with humanity. But when I first came here, you know, I was a poor boy. I got a job waiting at tables in restaurants. But I remember Trap doesn't exist anymore. But I remember the first Thanksgiving. I got a house in Greenwich, a room in Greenwich, southern house, but it was closed Thanksgiving, no meals, and I had no money, and I was hungry. So I thought I would walk down to the bar and get a meal at the Salvation Army. And I stood in a long line to get my ticket for a meal, and when I came there, they were all out of meals. So my first Thanksgiving in New York, I had no meal. But the second Thanksgiving was Castle Cornell's house, the little banquet with my dinner partner, and I had a wonderful time. America, as my mother used to say, America, such a wonderful place.
That's a pretty good year. You go from the Bowery to the Little Banquet, that's a pretty good year.
Yeah.
And there weren't that many years in between the first story and all of a sudden you're getting lots of roles and great roles and you're getting lots of critical and commercial praise. What was that like in that period of time to go from one end to the other?
Well, you know, I never wanted to be a movie star. I always thought of being a star on the stage. So in a sense, I'm a failure. Because I did lots of plays on Broadway, but I never became a star on Broadway. And I didn't want to go to Hollywood until my son Michael was born. I had no money, and my friend Lauren McCall talked to a producer who was going to New York, and she said, "You must see Kirk Douglas in his play The Wind and Dandy." He came and saw it and offered me a chance to go to Hollywood, and I took it. And I did my first picture with Barbara Stanwyck and Van Heflin, and then I went back to New York to do another spot.
It seems to have worked out okay.
Yes.
Well, About one of your early movies, there is a quotation or a part in the book which I thought I might read, which I found somewhat funny. It talks about how you have all the scripts from all your movies in your room.
Yeah.
And so you write, "My eyes go down the row of scripts, almost 90 of them. It looks endless. I reach out for another, the bad and the beautiful. Oh, I know what I wrote in this one. Quote, I shot this while fasting on Yom Kippur. You try making love to Lana Turner on an empty floor." I venture a guess. Part of the reporter's job is to take viewers or listeners to places where we haven't been. So I would venture a guess that none of us, the rest of us here, have had that experience. What do you remember?
Well, by the way, Lana Turner gave the best performance in that picture, the beautiful. And my daughter-in-law, the cancer has to be, when he came into my house with a wig, a blonde wig, and she looked entirely different. And she said, there's a script based on Lana Turner's life. And I think it would make a wonderful movie. But who knows, you know, it may be made, it may not. You can't tell. But she would be wonderful in the life of Lana Turner, because it was a very, very dramatic life.
A lot of us here know a lot about your career, but I don't believe that a lot of people know that you were a wrestler. You wrestled at St. Lawrence University, true?
Undefeated.
Undefeated.
When
I guess you remember.
one summer, I made money in the carnival. My buddy and the college wrestling team with the church, he would come out on the platform, who was telling my $1 million horse in the square. They came up and gave me some pants to wear, then we come up again, and then we wrestled. Of course, we had done it so often to get it. I think that's where I got my first traumatic training with wrestling. And then we come out again, a fight to the finish. And we made some money to take us to college.
Did you also wrestle once you got to New York? Or is that also true? That was done?
Not unless I had to.
It's a good thing to use on the movie set, I would imagine, if you had a disagreement with someone.
Well, being in that sport helped me in all the parts I played, because I was very egotistical in my youth, and I insisted on doing all the stuff, horseback riding and all that. So I think my training in wrestling helped very much.
You talk in the book about the young Kirk Douglas, and you look at it almost as from the third person. You as an elderly Kirk Douglas, or not quite as young Kirk Douglas, talking about the young Kirk Douglas, as if you could talk to him right now. Why so?
Well, you know, the stages of growing up are quite acute. When you're young, you're much more impulsive, much more daring. When you get older, you get to be a little bit more conservative. And that was clear to me when I was doing Spartacus. Spartacus was done through the McCarthy era, when there was a terrible time, when our freedom of speech was in danger. And McCarthy was accusing everybody of being communist, and especially talked to writers in the movie industry. And they were put on the blacklist when they did respond to the question of his committee. And one of those writers was Dr. Trouble, a really good writer, who spent 1 year in jail. And then when he came out, he was a blacklisted writer. And the suit he had at that time was so hypocritical. They let you use a blacklisted writer, but under an assumed name. Also, he could never go show his face at the studio. So when I was in the middle of shooting Spartacus with my company was producing, that aggravated me. And Donald Trumbull was working for me under the name Sam Jackson. And I was with my director, Sandy Cooper, and I said, I feel so funny to put on the screen Sam Jackson. And I feel like, well, he said, you know, what can you do about that? And suddenly I was young enough, to impulsive enough to say, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to put Dr. Trump's name on the screen. Well, good try. And you'll never work in this time again. And Otto Preminger, who was here in New York shooting Exodus, told me, and he was very upset. What are you doing? You know, well, I said, Otto, it's done. So he was very smart. He had a press conference and said he would use the name of Dr. Trumbull. So when Spartacus came out, it was the first picture that bore the name, the real name was Dr. Trumbull, and the blacklist were broken.
A few years after that, you're back on Broadway in a show, which people might not know. I think when people hear the Douglas family and One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, Michael Douglas made. But you were on Broadway in late 1963, 1964 in Cuckoo's Nest, and as the story goes, met with a film director by the name of Milos Forman in Czechoslovakia in the mid-60s. He was still in Czechoslovakia at the time, and you had the rights to the book.
No, that's such a sad story. Why do you bring it up? I bought the book One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I thought it was the book. I had a dramatist make it into a play. I went to New York because I always wanted to be a star on the stage. And I played it, and for 6 weeks I didn't take in any money. My agents were very angry with me because they had $1 million deals waiting. And after 6 weeks, I brought it back to Hollywood and tried to make it into a movie for a year and nothing. My son, Michael, was just going out of the streets of San Francisco, a TV show. And he said, Dad, let me take it. In 1 year, he had the money and the car. He put the show on. Everybody was an Oscar, and I didn't get to play the part.
If only he had gone to law school. Part of the backstory also is, as we did an interview with Mr. Foreman a couple of months ago on New York One, and he explains that Mr. Douglas and Milos Forman met in Czechoslovakia, and Mr. Douglas said, "I will send you the book." And Mr. Foreman said, "That will be great." And then the book never arrived. And 10 years later, Milos Forman's living at the Chelsea Hotel, and a package arrives from Michael Douglas with the book, who apparently knew, obviously, that his father had tried to do this years ago when the film gets made. And you met Milos Forman at some point, and he said something to the effect of, "Hey, how come you never sent that book?" And you said something to the effect of, as he says, "How come, you didn't get back in touch with me?" And apparently in Czechoslovakia in the mid-60s, the customs people, as Milos Forman believes, the customs people weren't so crazy about passing along books called One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. It seemed to work out in the end.
But when I said, "Michael, why did you insist on me playing the part?" He said, "Well, Foreman thought you were too old." I'm too old, I could play that part now. One got me mad that they got an actor who was great in the role and won an Oscar. And the other actor called Jack Nicholson.
Whatever became of him? Fans of your films know, obviously, films like Spartacus and Lust for Life, Vincent Van Gogh. One film that intrigues me is the anti-war film that you made in the late 50s, which was shot in Germany. Tell me a little bit about making Tell me a little about making an anti-war film.
Well, there was an unknown director called Stanley Kubrick, who made a little picture, The Killing. I saw it. I said, "That's very well done." And I called him to congratulate him and say, do you have any other project? He said, "Well, I have a project nobody wants to do." I said, "Send it." It was Paths of Glory. I read it, I said, "Stanley, this movie won't make a nickel, so we have to do it." So we made the picture with my company, Brandon, which, by the way, is my mother's name, Brandon. That's another story. I called my protection company, Brandon, and when I took over the Alzheimer's unit at the Orphic Intelligence Home, I called that Harry's Haven for my father, Harry Herschel. And they said, "Why didn't you go Harry's Haven? Sounds like a saloon." I said, "My father was like that. He spent a lot of time in saloons." But anyhow, we did the picture, Path of Glory, and it was banned in California, rather in France, for 15 years. Now they show it. And I think that was the picture that started Kubrick on his career. And I'm very proud of the picture. It's a very good anti-war film.
We'll have a few more questions, and then we'll have about a 15 or 20-minute question and answer period. That's an important subject. But on to another important subject. I understand your dogs have written an important letter of late that about something that's been in the news. Can you tell us? This is breaking news, I understand.
You know, in my book, if you just glance through the chapter title, you will know what the book is all about. I have one chapter, Don't Be Too Religious. I have another chapter, Romance Begins at 80. Then I have a chapter, Be the Person Your Dogs Think You Are. I have 2 Labradors. I have always had dogs. I love dogs. I have a chocolate and a yellow Labrador. And then when I went Leona helped me, left $15 million to his dog's trouble. I said, my dogs objected to that. And then I said, my dog said they're twice as big in trouble, they should get twice as much. And they are now really disturbed. What am I going to do for them? So I sat there, how about two of my dogs feel about the 50 million inheritances of trouble.
Now, just for the record, my mother is here today, and she is 80, so the whole business about romance begins at 80. Mom, it's just, you don't have to go literally. It's a suggestion, maybe.
Well, that chapter is a full chapter, and that proves that romance begins at 80.
You are beloved by a whole various generations of actors. It was my privilege to interview, I believe he's with us today, a fine actor and a longtime New Yorker, John Turturro, from the Spike Lee movies and the Coen Brothers movies. He's got a really good new movie out, director of a movie called Romance and Cigarettes, and he is an expert in your films. And so my question to you is, as you're coming up, and when you first get to New York, who is your Kirk Douglas?
You know, last night we saw a play, and we were in the little bistro having a hamburger, kosher hamburger. The guy, another kid, table come up, get to me, and he said, don't get up. And there was Al Pacino. And we embraced because years ago, I was in New York, and I went to a little theater. There was a play called The Indian Wants the Bronx, written by Edward Horowitz. And the leading character was fantastic. So after the show, I went backstage to meet him, Al Pacino, and I said, Al Pacino, you are going to be a star. And to me, I think he's one of the best actors that we have.
I only have about a few thousand more questions, but I think we should open up for Q&A now. So I believe there are microphones that are going to be going around, so if you would wait for those microphones, that would be helpful. Yes, over here.
You mentioned that the world is in a mess and that youth deserve to get special advice. Well, the Israeli youth is in the forefront of dealing with this mess. Do you have any special advice to give to the Israeli youth?
Advice to the Israeli youth, since you talk about in your book, you talk about what kind of situation we're in right now, and this gentleman is talking about how the Israeli youth are kind of at the forefront.
Don't worry about Israeli youth. I have been to Israel many times. I have met Begin, Sharon, the Perez, Echo Omer, Shimon Perez. I have met so many Israelis. I have established parks in Israel. One park that I established, the Arab Park, very beautiful spot on the top of a hill. And then I refurbished another park with Israeli small park. So they could play soccer together. I did that years ago. They had never played soccer together. But the Israeli, young Israeli, are a different breed of people. They are so strong. Just think of Israel. It's a sliver of land hugging the coast of the Mediterranean. Just look at what they're surrounded by. Syria, Iraq, Iran, Jordan, Egypt. They have fought about 5 wars and always won. They are the greatest bulwark for democracy in the world. If the Arabs succeed in wiping out Israel, we have a problem. But I don't think that will happen. And I feel that we, as Americans, you know, someone asked me, what, are you American or Israeli? I said, listen, I'm an American, and if Israel ever attack the United States, I will protect my country.
Right there, down the aisle, right here.
First of all, I'd like to wish you Lishana Tova, since we have our Jewish holidays coming up. And as an aspiring film writer and actor, I wanted to ask you if you had any advice that you might give, any wonderful words of wisdom from your fantastic career.
Words of advice. Words of advice to someone who is about to enter the world of film.
You heard what I said to my son, my field is a tough field. I'm tougher. And the reason why I did ever encourage my son or anybody to enter this field, because if you can persuade someone from entering the field, they shouldn't go into it. Because it's painful. The chances of success are minimal. A few people make it, and thousands of others don't. So it's hard for me to be persuading people not to go into profession, when my professor has given me so much. But the goal in life is happiness. So we want to do what can make you happy. Even the people in my profession, I see the young people reach out for happiness, by caring for others. And that's what religion is all about. Not the ritual. Religion was made to make you a caring person who cares for others. And the Jewish religion believes that very strongly. That's why I am proud to be a Jew.
One on this side. Microphone.
Yeah, right.
We have to wait for the microphone. Up in the middle, and then we have some questions there.
I would like to ask you if you remember that you made a movie in France directed by Anatole Litvak. It was called Un Acte d'Amour with Danny Robin. Do you remember that?
Is the name of the film one more time?
In French, it's Un Acte d'Amour, an act of love.
An Act of Love, a movie called An Act of Love.
L'acte d'amour.
That's what.
C'était le premier film que j'ai fait à Paris.
Oui.
And in the film, I met my wife, Anne. She was not in the film. She was working in publicity. And there was a beautiful girl playing her first ever role.
Brigitte Bardot.
Winter time, and she was all dressed up in heavy clothes. Well, she had a beautiful face. But after the picture was over, my wife and I were at the beach at the Lido, and that young girl, so beautiful, would come by. My God, with legs endless. My wife, who is that? And that girl looked at me and said, Kirk! Kirk! It was Brigitte Bardot, but
I had the pleasure to talk to you about 35 years ago about that same movie at the airport in Kennedy at that time already, and I greeted you by Shalom Aleichem, and you answered me Aleichem Shalom. And we spoke for about 15 or 20 minutes in the airplane.
I understand how you might want to dissuade young people from going into the business, but after telling the story of seeing Brigitte Bardot on the beach, you know, I'm ready to quit my job.
listen, when I met Brigitte Bardot, I was not married, and I was not interested in getting her into movies. I had other intentions.
I find that hard to believe.
Douglas, this is a two-part question. Number one, your great body of work, my personal favorite is Champion, which you play the boxer. Could you give us a few recollections of that? And secondly, could you give us a few recollections of your having worked with another great actor, Burt Lancaster?
You know, the tragedy about getting older is that you lose so many of your friends. And when I think Frank Sinatra, Walter Matthau, Burt Lancaster, Jack Lemmon, and so many others who are gone, it makes you feel lonely. But Burt Lancaster, one day was not eating. And Bert said to him, Kirk, you're not eating anything. I say, hey, Kirk, Bert, when I have to stand up to say something, I want my brain full and my stomach empty. So I went up to give a speech, and when I came back down to sit down, Bert leaned over and he said, Kirk, you could have eaten. We did a play together in San Francisco for 6 weeks. We did 3 song and dance routines, one for Oscars and one in London. We had a wonderful relationship, and one of his sons who wrote the Big Black Bears, the baseball picture, he was a friend of my son. So the memories are poignant, really. And of course, John Wayne. You know, John Wayne was in Hollywood. I was in London making pictures. He called me, Kirk, I have a script. You will be very good for it. And I will play a lesser part of the general. What script did he have? Cast a giant shadow. So there we were in Israel with John Wayne, you Bernard, Frank Sinatra, me. I tell you, Israel has never been the same.
Speaking of Sinatra, you write in the book about playing poker at Sinatra's house with Gregory Peck and Jack Lemmon. Can you understand that for most of us, just that image of being in that room, most of us wouldn't be able to say a word, our jaws would be open?
Well, you know, we still have a Sunday poker game at Barbara Sinatra, but so many of the players are gone, you know, Sinatra, Gregory Peck, Jack Lemmon. And I look around the other day at the poker table, I said, you know, when I'm gone, you will still be playing poker, but you will call it widow's poker.
A few more questions. Microphones. Can we get a microphone? Some microphones down front, please.
I have here one.
We
I
have.
just want to send you some regards.
Can you use the microphone, please?
Oh, can't you hear me? I thought I had a very strong voice. I want to send you regards. You did a movie with Spirit of Denmark, and there was a very young actor, David Weston, and he's now at the moment in King Lear with Ian McKellen. And he told me especially to come, and if you don't remember him, he remembers you very well, and he sends you his regards, David Weston.
Oh, David Weston is in King Lear. His
Ian
regards.
McKellen.
Yes.
In King Lear with Ian McKellen in Boom Theatre.
Let's get one more question.
Hey, can I talk, please?
Right. We're back in New York, Kirk.
My name is Esser, and I was born June 27th, 1917. I met you at the Waldorf Astoria. You were coming down the balcony. You were just making the Sin of Martha Ivers. And I was so smitten with your performance, and I told you you were overwhelmed.
First of all, I have to say, what were 2 guys named Isser doing in the Waldorf?
There is a line, a great line at the yet another great movie involving a pretty fair actor himself, Spencer Tracy. A movie called The Last Hurrah, in which he turns to one of the other characters, one of the aides, one of his aides. He was a big-time political boss, Spencer Tracy, and he says to this aide, "How do you thank a man for 1,000,000 laughs?" Well, thank you for this book, and thank you for 1,000,000 wonderful memories.
For each book that